What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up Podcast. My name is Cameron McCulloch-Keeble, and I know what you're thinking. Wow, the middle of June is a really weird time to do a Game of the Year episode, and you're damn right it's a really weird time to do the Game of the Year episode. That's why I'm joined by Lewis Crawford. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Very confused.
Very confused. Are you ready to talk about Game of the Year, finally?
Yes, I think
Excellent.
Now that we're 6 months in, I feel like I'm ready for 2016.
2016 was a good year, a fine vintage. So we thought about Game of the Year, especially as the year ended, and we kind of came to the decision and the conclusion that we hadn't really had enough time to consider all the nominees. We've all sort of gone through fairly major life changes in the last year, myself and Lawrence especially, and so by the time the end of the year came, we just hadn't had a huge amount of time to play games. With Game of the Year debates, it's really important that you've considered all the things that you think could have potentially taken it. We didn't want to stand here and be like, yeah, Pokemon Go was the Game of the Year because we hadn't played anything else. It would have been disingenuous. So, yeah, it's June, it's the middle of June, and we are putting out our Game of the Year episode. But we're doing it because we think it presents a sort of sense of authenticity and what we actually believe to be the Game of the Year, rather than just sort of doing it at the end of the year because it's arbitrary. So, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So without further ado, the way that we have always done Game of the Year is to present two games that were a contender and then one game that was like our finalist, and we'll sort of debate that finalist between us. So do you want to present your first contender?
Yeah, so we gave The Witcher 3 our kind of Game of the Year previously, and the DLC came out in 2016. This is DLC Blood and Wine, which added like another 100 hours to the game.
Right.
Loads of story, loads of like the thing that they did with Witcher, the thing that made it my Game of the Year was that they, you know, every single quest is voice acted. There's very few quests that are like go collect 6 things. It's all interesting, it's all story, it's all written, it's all you know, and that's very distinct to it. There's a lot, like a big lack of games that are willing to spend so much time on lore and depth and fleshing out everything and voice acting everything and like having as much content as Witcher does. And yeah, like Blood and Wine was more of the same and also improving a little bit here and there. Yeah, so that's probably why it gets mine, and I've been playing it to death.
So that's your Blood and Wine is your first contender.
Yeah.
So that was your contender. My one, although I used it as a joke example, is Pokemon Go.
Interesting.
I love Pokemon Go. I absolutely love Pokemon Go. I played it a little bit when it first came out. I actually didn't play it the way you're supposed to. I played it on Wi-Fi and not really 3G, so I didn't get like the exploration side of it at all. But I love Pokemon Go. The way that it fits into my life, the way that it's made me try and be healthier, the way that it's made me want to walk more places, the way it's made me aware of the world I'm walking around, the way that, like, when I have a rough day, I will be like, I'll come home, I'll have a nice dinner, and I'll be like, I want to get an hour of fresh air, I'm going to go catch Pokemon at the local church, or there's an event on right now, I need to get outside. Like, I love Pokemon Go. I think it's a really brilliant idea.
Yeah, I think so, and like I can agree. I can see why you've chosen it, and I think like it's so. Sorry, you know, you said you didn't play it on day. Did you still catch like the hype of it, or the like? So for me, the best time I would play that game was when I would go to the local park and I could see that there was 50 other people playing that game.
So I got a bit of that because I would go to like. When it first came out, I was still living and working in Milton Keynes, so I would go to like the centre sometimes with people and see people playing it. But I didn't get caught up in like the massive crowds of people playing it. That was the point at which my interest was starting to grow.
Yeah, because like so, obviously I live in well, not obviously, but I live in central London, and when Pokemon Go dropped, like very quickly, you would go to the local park and there would be 100 people. All on their phone, would be chatting. It was amazing, and I think like that's the big thing that Pokemon Go did, and probably why it deserves to be in this list of games.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an absolute phenomenon. Even if it was only a phenomenon for a couple of weeks, it was an absolute phenomenon, and I've never seen gaming picked up in the mainstream as much as it was with Pokemon.
Definitely.
Literally every person I knew was playing it, and there's never been a game that you like. Even with GTA 5, there are people I know who weren't playing it who played Pokemon Go.
Yeah, definitely. It's so accessible and so easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your second contender?
So it's Dark Souls 3. Really lovely game, continuing the amazing Dark Souls series. I really enjoyed this one as well. It was a lot easier to play than the other ones, I find. There's a bit of a debate amongst the Dark Souls fans about whether people like this one, but I think generally the Dark Souls fans don't know quite what they want.
Nothing like starting a Game of the Year discussion out by attacking an entire community. Nice work.
No, it's harsh, but I mean, like, Dark Souls is harsh.
No, but I get what you mean. Like, Dark Souls 3 was a really major switch up of the franchise and a major switch up of like the core mechanics of it because of the influence of Bloodborne.
Yeah.
And really where FromSoft was going. We don't really know if that's where they're going anymore. Quick moment of disclosure, we're recording this before the Sony press conference. We're kind of building on our excitement by doing this. And so for all we know, like, FromSoft announces Mech Assault tonight that looks totally different. But yeah, at the time this was a really natural step for From Software in that faster, more arcadey style of combat. Not like arcadey in a true sense, but more arcadey.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that I would say with Dark Souls is that I questioned whether this kind of would be good enough to be my game of the year, because it's one of these things like, if I rated the game, I probably wouldn't put it that high, but at the same time, the fact that I played it for hundreds of hours and I continue to play it for hundreds of hours, and I'll probably play it even more after that, and recently I came back to Dark Souls 2, and I think I'm going to come back to Dark Souls 3 in like a year's time and play it again for 100 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I've played Dark Souls 1, and I played it fairly well, I'd say. I'm on my new game plot. Well, not like good at it. I played it fairly in depth. Like, I'm not. I have played it to the point where I know a lot of the tricks to things. I still find challenge in it, but I know what's coming up. I know where the secrets are. I know what the lore is. Like, I know Dark Souls 1 well enough. And it's odd that for such a hardcore game, I feel like I can always pick up Dark Souls. Like, I feel like I can always grab it and go, here's the next thing I want to achieve. And I won't achieve it because it takes a couple of times, especially when you warm me back up to it. But it's always there. And the funny thing is, when I played Dark Souls 1 the first time, I got to a point, put it down. I got to a point that turned me off, put it down for about 3 years.
Okay, 3 years is a bit long. But what I would say is that you'll find, I think, that most people have that. I don't really know how reviewers, how critics get over Dark Souls.
I know.
Because, like, I think that's a very natural way to play Dark Souls, especially your first Dark Souls, is to pick it up, put it down, pick it up again, like, a week, a month, a year later, and go, okay, this is actually really good.
So we have no reason to plug anything on this show. We have no reason to plug anything, but I will do here. If you want to get back into Dark Souls or into Dark Souls, IGN do an amazing series called Prepare to Try, which is hosted by Gavin, Rory, and Daniel Krupa. And so they have like a Dark Souls expert in Daniel Krupa, a Dark Souls noob in Rory, and somebody who's kind of there for comedy in Gavin. And it makes it so friendly and accessible. The reason I picked that game back up was because they made it look like something I could do, and I love Dark Souls. Like, I hated Dark Souls when I put it down, and I'm absolutely converted to it now. So if you want to get back into it, I highly recommend that.
Yeah, and it is always worth getting back into. I think.
Oh yeah,
it's always an education. It's always kind of learning more, and I think that's one of the cool things about Dark Souls is that it is like it's a game of life. You need to like learn how to get over something, then you get over it, and you get the satisfaction. And I love that.
My second contender that fell very shy of being my finalist, and it pains me to say this, is Overwatch.
Oh really?
I love Overwatch. So for a whole load of time, I've never really understood people who play one online game. Like, it's always seemed very, but why would you not open yourself up to more content? And then I played Overwatch. And Overwatch has captured me in a way I never thought it would. Like, I played the open beta when it went onto consoles for a week, and I was like, cool, I've done 30 hours in this, I'm probably done with it. and I've put about 200 hours into Overwatch now.
That's cool.
It's so addictive. I think one of the reasons that I really like Overwatch is there's a really high skill ceiling. Like, you can pick up any character, really, but when you learn how to play them and learn how to play them well, you get so critical when you play them badly that, like, I've played Zarya for probably 50 hours, and, like, I'm an alright Zarya, but I know where I can get better, and it's constantly eating at me that, like,
That's interesting. I
haven't played enough Zarya this week, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's something that all really good like esporty multiplayers do.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a thing on Dota is like if you've done 2,000 hours, you're still probably a noob.
Right, like Dota's a really good kind of... I mean, it's not a really good parallel in the style of game, but it is a really good parallel in the style of community and the kind of support that it's been shown. And, like, I've never really got into esports. Like, I always thought that esports were cool and I really want to support them, but I never had a reason to watch esports until Overwatch. And I was watching the Overwatch World Cup at my desk. Like, I was doing spreadsheets and studenty stuff on one screen and had the Overwatch World Cup on my... Like,
That's interesting.
I literally did not have lunch for a week so I could watch the Overwatch World Cup. I am so enamoured with the world. I love the characters. I love the lore. I love the way it tells its story. I cannot wait for the next year of drops. And I'm one of those community members. I'm not very like loud and active. I don't post a lot in the Overwatch community, but I'm constantly in the background watching stuff, watching what gets leaked, seeing the rumors, and I love it. I absolutely love Overwatch. And it pains me that it's not my finalist, but I'm kind of glad it isn't.
See, I find that interesting. So I'm going to talk about my finalist.
Go for it.
Uncharted 4. Absolutely beautiful. Does, like, one of the big things, you know, we're here at E3. We're watching E3 at the moment, and you know, we just watched Ubisoft, which are famous for this, like, games that looked better, looked different. They didn't come out in the way that they said they would. Uncharted 4 looks exactly like it did. It plays like it was meant to play. It plays like how they showed it playing, you know, and it does all of it. Like, beautiful game, beautiful story. Like, see, the reason I really like Uncharted is they're not afraid to do a bit where it's just like, this next bit's just story. This next bit's, you know, the next bit of this game is 30 minutes. It's just story. And I think a lot of games these days are kind of afraid to do that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
And that's where Uncharted and where Naughty Dog get there. The thing is, they're willing to spend as much time in developing the story, in you know, a very focused, very action-packed, very interesting and tight story, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they improved on the gameplay, they improved on the stealth and action kind of sides of things, and it looks beautiful. So really, it's tough to not kind of... I mean, you know, like, I think a lot of... If we look at the critics' Game of the Year, like, there's a reason why Uncharted 4 won so many other awards, and it's because it does hit the top when you look at, like, story, gameplay, and graphics. You know, it kind of... So it's one of those big blockbuster AAA hitters, and it does it really well, you know. And I'm kind of excited to see the Uncharted DLC again, but I'm a little bit sad that maybe Uncharted's not gonna go on in the same way that it has, you know.
I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion, because I think both the games that we're going to talk about do a very similar thing in very different ways.
Yeah.
My finalist is Jonathan Blow's The Witness, for a myriad of reasons, and we'll sort of break down each of the reasons in turn. But the reason specifically that I love The Witness is because I came to The Witness wanting one thing, and what I got out of The Witness and what I continue to get out of The Witness is something utterly, drastically different. And I've delved and researched into where The Witness comes from, its development history, the backstory of it, what it was before it was The Witness, what it will be going forward. Like, I've delved into that so deeply as a result of how well this game is made. The other reason that I think it is Game of the Year, and actually for me it's one of the best games I think I've ever played, like, it's very easily in my top 10 if not top 3, is because I think it's an absolute bible in how to design a game. Like, I think as a game it's a 10 out of 10, but as a document for how you should consider designing games in the future, it's even more important than that.
Really?
Yeah,
See-
100%.
Okay.
So I think we should make very clear from this point on, very clear. A, I have not played Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
So I can speak to what I know about it from an industry perspective. I can speak to the story. I can speak to the references and Easter eggs. I can speak to the graphics, but I won't speak to the gameplay other than my own perception of it, as in like what it looked like from the trailers. You played The Witness.
Yeah, I have.
You've got to at least the first ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing we'll say is from this point on, spoilers for everything. What we'll do is we'll highlight in the video where we make our decision. Which one we choose, so it's The Witness versus Uncharted at this point, so that you can, if you're really desperate to find out, get to that point without hearing the spoilers. But the next good chunk of this video is going to be us arguing the tits off these video games. So let's kind of break it down. Let's break it down into different chunks, so narrative, gameplay, style, all that kind of jazz. So I don't know, where do you want to start?
So what I will say, with like the way that you played The Witness, I think is very unique.
Really?
I don't think many people will have played it the way that you played it.
So how do you think I played it?
Well, the way that you make it sound is that you did like the amount of hours that you seem to have spent on Witness, like, sounds like it's triple, quadruple what I did.
Yes, but I think so. What was your full fucking spoilers? You get to the end of The Witness the first time, and the game shows you the world being kind of recreated through almost a panel that you step into, and then it takes you back to the beginning of the game, and it's very much the whole indie trick of now you're back at the beginning and here's the world again. What did you do immediately after that?
I don't know if I continued. So
see, that is where I think you think it's unique, and I don't think it is at all. Did you find the hotel?
I like, I've looked it up. Like, I know things that are in there.
So,
as well,
like,
but...
you know the hotel and the creepy video. You
Yeah.
know the challenge in the caverns.
Maybe that's kind of like what maybe kind of ruined it a little bit, I guess, would be, if you'd say so.
So the funny thing is like I looked those things up and then found them.
Okay.
But I was so desperate to find them.
Okay.
Like it just the ending of the game was kind of what I thought it would be. I went into The Witness wanting the what is in the center of the mountain, but by the end of The Witness I just wanted like I wanted a sense of semblance and a sense of understanding that was never going to be given to me. So I remember when we talked about doing a Game of the Year episode the first time, and I said mine was The Witness. You asked why, and I said because I never played BioShock. Like, I never played BioShock 1. I have now since. I think it's an amazing game. But when it came out, the hype for BioShock and the sort of the talk about it being a brand new way of telling stories in games and the level that it put story on was unmissable, and I never experienced that. I was never part of that cultural conversation.
Yeah.
And so for me, playing BioShock afterwards, it was like looking back on something that had been monumental for other people. This was as close as... So I got that same feeling from BioShock Infinite of like understanding all the little cogs and turnings in a world and working out where they fitted into each other and how they deepened that story. The Witness for me was that. I came in expecting to find out some crazy, amazing secret in the center of the mountain, and what I found was that there were so many cogs turning in this world, and I kept uncovering them. And I fucking love that. Like, I could open The Witness now and sit here for hours.
Yeah.
Sit here for absolute hours trying to find more stuff, uncover more videos, and everything I find, it would chill me a little more. It would make me feel even more uncomfortable, and I would want to continue. And there is very few games, Arkham Asylum is maybe the closest one to it, that have made me feel so genuinely uncomfortable in a way that make me want to find out what the truth is.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I still think, as I say, that you're probably the ultimate, or
Witness nerd.
very highly up there. Like, I don't know if people will have... I don't know if there's many who will put it at... Maybe not... Like, it's got high regard standard, like a...
Like the average consumer versus critical response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's... You know, I'm very glad that, like, you've got a game that you've kind of got so involved in like that. You know, it's cool. I do... As I say, like, I do think, like like, you know, for me, when I played The Witness, I guess you can argue about to what level I played The Witness. You know, I kind of ran through half the game in one day and ran through the other half of the game the next day.
Wow. Okay, so that's really... So I think you're unique. So the thing I've heard from a lot of people, I got hooked on... I got pitched... Not pitched, like... The reason I started wanting to play The Witness was because I heard conversations between IGN's Marty Sweever and Justin Davis. And Marty was talking about how he was able to play for a couple of hours, get to a puzzle that he couldn't do, and step away from it. And it would be coming back in a day, in 2 days, in a week, with that kind of blank mindset of, oh, this is clearly what I have to do. But because the game had taught him so well, it was like when you understand a word for the first time. Like, the way he described it was the game teaches you a language, and like the first puzzle you solve is the letter A, the second set of puzzle you solve is the letter B, and the third C. But by the end of that, you can spell baked. And so the game will give you a puzzle with the word baked, and it's only at that point that you're like, fuck, I'm actually making progress here.
Yeah, so I can see that.
So I think, like, did you use guides, or did you just force yourself down it?
Like, no, I wouldn't say I forced myself down it. Like, I like, this is the thing, I clearly enjoyed the game very much to play it like that.
Sorry, forcing yourself down is the wrong word in that sense. But, like, did you just keep going at puzzles until you solved them, or did you use a guide, or did you stop?
I kept going until I solved them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I'm good at puzzles. The only bits I guess that I found really difficult were the bits that weren't obviously puzzles.
So let's talk about style. I think this is going to be really interesting because Uncharted is very photorealistic.
Yeah.
And beautifully so.
Yeah.
Like, it makes stylistic choices, but its stylistic choices are more cinematic, whereas The Witness has, like, a very defined art style. So Uncharted 4 is undeniably gorgeous. It's undeniably gorgeous. Like, those character models, the way the world is built, the way that the environments look, it's undeniably gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think... like, so much was done to kind of work on all the effects and make sure all of that worked. It's beautiful. And it's something that Uncharted's always kind of done. Like, since the beginning of Uncharted, it's always kind of pushed the console it's on.
Yeah, very true.
It's always done as much as it can do at the time and, like, pushed out, you know. Because it does the beautiful landscapes. It does, like... They try in each Uncharted game to pretty much to include as much different variety of environments and styles and areas, and you know, and it did it very well. It does it very well.
And it's I mean, it's one of Uncharted 4's and all the Uncharted games' main selling points is like they are more paintings in a sense than games, in that you're there to enjoy the vistas as much as anything else. Would you say that Uncharted 4 is varied enough?
Yeah, no, I really would.
Okay.
Like, the whole reason I like Uncharted is because it does what... what's that movie? It does...
Indiana Jones?
No, like, it's a worse Indiana Jones, but with... is it Nick Cage?
National Treasure?
Yeah, it does what National Treasure does, which...
Didn't think we'd get a Nicolas Cage reference on this. Nice.
Like, it does what, you know, like National Treasure, Indiana Jones as well.
Yeah.
They do this element of, like, you go into one environment, you get to the end of that environment, you find puzzles, you unlock something, you find the 100-year-old tomb and you get an item.
Yeah. And
then that item takes you to Bolivia. And then, you know, you find something and that item takes you to the deserts, or, you know, whatever. Like, and I love that in Uncharted because it does mean that things are always varied. There's always another environment. There's always another cool thing coming.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, and I will say that, like, I wasn't saying do you think it's varied enough as an advocate thing, but you have a fairly strong history with the Uncharted games and you know them fairly well. So, like, I'm more interested in how does Uncharted 4 stack up against the other Uncharted games?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, that's one that I'm going to have difficulty answering as well.
Oh, really?
Well, it's just that, like the Uncharted series blends, apart from possibly the first one, the Uncharted series blends so well together, because each game does what it does very well, that it's quite easy to kind of go, like, it's quite difficult maybe to differentiate between the games right in my head, because I'm like, this did it well, this did it well, this did it well.
Right. So you really see like the timeline of the character rather than game.
Yeah, and I guess like and I guess that's the thing. Like what Uncharted 4 did was more focus on like on story wise, it focused on like the main character's personal life, and that's something that did vary and stand it out away from.
And I will say that when we saw a bunch of that gameplay, the what are they called, the options, the talking options.
Yeah,
that was like a really nice addition to the game, in my opinion. I really like the way that Naughty Dog were very clearly saying goodbye to Uncharted. And they were allowing you to sort of say your goodbyes to Uncharted. So whatever you filled in with whichever of the conversation options you chose, it was your way of saying, this is the bit I want to talk about. Which is a really nice way of doing it. Uncharted 3 and to some extent Uncharted 2 are considered critical masterpieces.
Yeah.
They're considered kind of the apex of what an Uncharted game is, and there is argument that Uncharted 4 fell flat to some extent with a slightly elongated middle section. This is critical opinion, I haven't played the game, with a slightly elongated middle section, for example, and just a story that didn't catch people by surprise as much as perhaps the others did. Where do you fall on that?
I would disagree.
Really?
Quite strongly, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Uncharted 4 had me through the whole game.
Wow.
I never really felt like it slowed down too much.
Okay.
And it caught me very much, actually. I think.
Is it a very heavily emotional story in your opinion?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, definitely. Like it's got an incredibly emotional ending. Okay. Incredibly. Like I put
Did
it down.
you cry?
Did I cry? I might have. I can't remember. Potentially.
So I think one of the reasons that I think Uncharted is a really interesting game to consider, Uncharted 4 especially, is because it is the swan song of a franchise that will probably come back.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know we're likely to see DLC from the Sony conference tonight that we're recording this before. So, like, Uncharted is not finished. And I wonder how much of the response that people had is because this was shown to them as a swan song rather than it actually being the swan song. Like, I wonder if Uncharted 4 will carry the same weight in a few years' time when Uncharted whatever is next may have come out.
I think it depends. I mean, like, so they didn't technically say it's the end of Uncharted as much as it's the end of the character.
That is true.
And I think in spite of I think if there is another Uncharted game, we know who the main character's going to be, and it's not.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
you can say spoilers at this point. It's his daughter, right?
Yeah. Like, and it's quite the ending of it's quite nice at pointing that out and being like, this is quite clearly what's going to happen if there is another Uncharted game.
Do you think there will be?
Yeah. I think we'll get Last of Us 2, and then we'll get the next Uncharted game. Maybe with something in between, but
I think something in between's a fair shout.
But I do think, and I to be honest, it would be lovely because it would be nice to have the same kind of game, but with a cheeky female protagonist instead of a.
Yeah, that's true. I can see that. So we've talked quite heavily about the story of Uncharted. I'm going to present my case for the story of The Witness, and the reason I think the story of The Witness is amazing is there's two reasons. I do that a lot. The reason is there's two reasons. The first reason is, at first glance, it looks like it's left up to your, like, what did you take away from it kind of story.
Yeah, and I just to quickly jump in, like,
go for it.
You know, when you said you hadn't played Uncharted 4 and you're talking about from that point of view, it's easy for me to kind of go, while I did like this game, I'm probably not as in the story as you would be, you know.
That's fine. But I think actually it quietly subverts that trope. So, like, it's a trope of indie games that they end the story on, but what did you get from it, rather than being, like, actually sure about what the story is, because it's safer to kind of make a game about nothing, but with the substance of the player, than with something and make a statement about it. But I don't think that's what The Witness is doing at all. The Witness is, in my opinion, a very clear story about an incident. whether that be an incident in a... so I think it can be a story about multiple things, but it's very clearly a story about these things. It's an incident in terms of society. It's an incident that causes a world like this. It's also an allegory for mental health, and an incident in somebody's mind, and an incident about somebody being cancelled through this. It's also a story about somebody being kidnapped in some form. So, and the reason that I've come to these different conclusions is the multiple endings. So the first ending is the one that you get to at the end, which slowly tells the story of, through like environmental storytelling, of a world that's gone wrong, right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of evidence about people living their daily lives, and there's houses all around the place, and villages, and people doing things that you'd expect of them, but they're frozen in place. And there's also there's lots of iconography in the game. So there's a company logo that keeps appearing, and on your first playthrough you'll notice it's there, but you won't like notice that it has ties to anything else. All you can see is that this company existed and probably got bigger, and then something happened and these people were stuck in place. And the world that you're playing through is afterwards. You're kind of literally connecting the dots of what happened to this world by connecting the dots of the world itself. The second ending is the hotel, which is... so the very first puzzle that you get through that's a gate to the next area is a puzzle in itself connected by the sun. And if you do that puzzle, you open up a portal into a hotel, and the hotel is the credits of the game. So as you walk through and pick up audio logs, it tells you the sound was developed by Simon... I can't remember his name, but and those are the credits of the game. What it also tells you is that's the company. And the company is watching over the island. And so everything you do, the hotel has been there the whole time, you just didn't find it. Everything you do is being watched over by this hotel that is the company that got bigger on the island. They are responsible of this for some extent. And as you get through, you come out the other side of there's a really nasty, creepy video. It's not like really nasty, but when you get to the end of the kind of feeling of the witness, it really capitalizes on that, of somebody who is like stuck in an office developing a game, and they have something like attached to their head, and they're clearly very weak, they're falling about the floor, they're trying to work out where they are. Also, though, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that video that you see in the world. So there's dots everywhere, there's like little symbols and iconography that you find in the world. That video is as much a person being kidnapped as it is a person with some kind of mental health disorder. So OCD, for example. And the way that they're dealing with their real world is finding this iconography, much like you do in the game. And the thing is that a lot of indie games at this point would have gone, but it could have been all three. But The Witness literally presents them to you, and you have to find them. Like, this is not the Mass Effect ending of choose a different color, see a different video. This is quite literally, if you're willing to search for it, there is such a deep story here. That's before you get into any of the theater shit, which is like about God and about, the potential implications of religion, the potential implications of evolution. This is before you get into anything about society, about politics and empires. All of that stuff is there and presented. And the only thing you have to do is be willing to look for it. And I think the thing that sets The Witness apart is that it makes you want to look for things. We'll talk about this more in the gameplay section, but if you finish the first story and walk away from it, what you finished with is an indie game.
Yeah.
If you finish the first story and go back even very briefly, you'll notice in the pause menu that it kind of opens up the next thing. And it's very easy, in my opinion, and you should have already found it by the time you get to that point of finding what the next thing is. And by finding that next thing, it shows you the next thing. And the next thing leads you to each different type of story, to the point where by the time you've finished the stats in the pause menu, you'll know The Witness well enough to find the hidden, secret, almost nasty shit. Like, the game is teaching you to be obsessed with the game.
Okay.
And I just, it's... I'd like to talk about the history of The Witness, and I think the history of The Witness and it's how pure it is as an expression of video games is why it's my game of the year. But it's so incredibly clever to have a game be that forward, that willing, and that confident in the story that it's telling you, that it would even present it as a almost shitty indie game. and then subvert that trope so strongly.
Yeah. Okay. You blow me away a little bit. Okay.
So you didn't get any of that. You said you looked up the hotel.
Yeah.
What was your response when you saw that?
Just that it was kind of weird. Like that's the problem.
Wow, okay.
You know. So like, and I think, like as nasty as not nasty. It's not nasty. Like I think I'm not necessarily alone with that. I think, but like, it's cool that the game's got that kind of depth. I never really kind of felt it.
That's cool.
But maybe that's because I didn't put in the hours, I guess.
So, I talked very briefly there about the reason I think that it's my game of the year is because it's so pure, and I'll speak to that a bit now. One of the problems I have with Uncharted 4 is, from an industry perspective, is that it is the child of some very obvious problems. It's the child of Amy Hennig leaving, of the studio having problems, and to give it its credit, what came out of that is an incredibly well-managed, incredibly polished product. But I think for me there will forever be, even when I do play it, even if I play it and love it to the high heavens, there will always be a sense of, there is a game here that didn't ever come out. There is an Uncharted 4 that we started to see in demos, in on-screen stuff in that first trailer, that we will never know what that was. And I kind of preferred the tone of that. I kind of preferred the tone of the more traditional kind of pirate way of being, the more thieving way of being. I think it spoke to me more. Whereas The Witness is a pure core concept turned into absolute perfection. So The Witness started years and years ago when Kinect started. And when Kinect started, you had a lot of spell games that were teaching people to move around the world by like flicking their hands in stupid ways, and they would be spells. And Jonathan Blow started designing a game where you would find spells in the world that would teach you how to solve puzzles, and you'd use those spells to solve puzzles. The big thing that he wanted to do was that you would reach the top of the mountain, look down on the river, and see one of those spells in the river, and that would teach you that the environment is telling you there's more spells here. And what I love about that is that The Witness is totally different to that. There is not that game at all. But that moment hit me like a fucking brick. And it didn't even happen on the mountain. Like, I can't remember where it was the first time I did it. But...
Well, there's a few places I can imagine it would happen. Because I think there's a certain angle where, like, you start seeing stuff glow slightly.
Yeah.
When you look at it, and if you stand, like, in the exact right place, you can see it. So I'm probably there. I
can't remember exactly where I was in the game when it hit me, but it was the first time that I clicked on the circle that was in the environment and it popped to life. And I remember just putting my head in my hands and going, "You bastard." And I was like, I've played this with with Jess, my girlfriend, and the whole time that she's been trying to solve puzzles that I couldn't get, I've been saying, the game isn't even about this. Like, we're wasting time looking at screens. I think the game is about the environment. And it's about both. Yeah, okay. I can kind of see that angle. I don't know if this is where I have a problem with this game. Oh, right, okay. Kind of, no. Like, using the environment, amazing. Okay, perfect. I love it. My problem is the puzzles, the wasting time on screen, if you like. So, you know, to me, going in, we talked about this, but I felt like I wanted Myst. And when you want that kind of thing, like the thing that the Myst series does what this game does, but then like it does it through kind of picking up items and using them in different places and you know, that kind of thing. But it like every Myst game has this kind of, the whole environment is part of a bigger puzzle thing. Yeah. And this game does that to some extent. I think not like, obviously, like in terms of like the using the hedgerows as like a part of a puzzle is cool. Yeah. Not disputing that. But like one of the things I loved about Myst, and I guess maybe you could argue this point, is that, you know, like the end of a level, the whole island is like actually one thing. Yeah. You know, it's like an item or the next puzzle, or it's the next signifier that you're going on. Yeah. And that's, so maybe that's why I was a little bit less engaged with it, because I like the puzzles. I like the puzzles, definitely, but like there was a point which fatigued me of that. So the more you tell me about how you experienced the game, the more sad I am that you experienced it this way. Did you ever discover the obelisks?
Yeah.
Did you discover what they were?
No.
Okay. So, oh God, this is so sad. Like, that sounds really patronising, but like, it's really fascinating that we both played the same game and got something so different out of it. When you complete one of those environment puzzles, you'll see that the glow of it shoots off into something, and what it shoots off into is those obelisks. And those obelisks, the different sides of them tell you where those different puzzles are. So if you look at side A and there's 4 puzzles you haven't completed, you need to go in that direction to get them. But those obelisks light up, and when those obelisks light up, the river, the fountain and the river in the centre of the thing changes. And as you change the fountain in the centre of the thing, you'll notice that other things start to change. So if you discovered... Did you discover a vault at any point with the briefcases inside?
I would not be able to tell you.
That's fine. So I think you would know if you did. Like,
okay.
they unfold and they have like hexagon puzzles inside, and they give you the solutions to the videos.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I have.
So if you unlock one of those, that changes on the fountain, and you can then plumb that into the video, which had puzzles inside it, which you could then change the obelisks, which you could change to go back and get another vault, which you could then change to
it's possible
get a
that level
video.
that I didn't get.
Right. What I think you were looking for was for the next puzzle to be like, this is what you need to do, whereas I think the way you're supposed to do it is find them organically, and then the world tells you this is the thing you haven't done yet, and when you fix that, the world finds you the next thing organically and says this is the thing you haven't done yet, and by the time you get to those stages, the world is kind of your oyster, because all the different, like, the way that you get into the challenge at the end of the game, which is the really hardcore gameplay section of it, to be honest, is that took me fucking ages. It took me a good 4 or 5 weeks. The way you get into that is it's just under the solution to the top of the mountain. So if you get to the top of the mountain and open the box that they have in their hands, you start the mountain puzzle. If you literally get down the first stair and look under it, that puzzle extends, and you can do the second solution of it. And like, I think I kind of consider The Witness an evolution of Myst, because Myst was like the game. Myst found a way of handing you a puzzle, you solving it, and then it gave you the next puzzle. Like, it wouldn't giving you the next puzzle is might not be the right thing, but like, you always knew what the next thing was because it was Myst, right? Because that was how the game played. Whereas The Witness did it in such a way that you did it because you knew it was there, because the game found a way of telling you it was there.
Yeah.
And when you did it and completed it, A, you got a sense of progression, which made you do the rest better. But B, you found the next puzzle, which would teach you the next thing. And you probably noticed the world changing a little bit, but it was that build-up of enough little bits that you started to question what was going on around you. The Witness is quite literally a game that's teaching you to question the game. Question the way it's built, question why these choices have been made, and when you work out what they are, you unlock the next level of understanding of what can you question next. To the point where you can literally break the game down to a full motion video, and even that has meaning. Even that is built for a reason. So many... The thing I love about The Witness, and the thing the reason it's one of my favourite games of all time, is because there is not a single grain of sand in that game that is not built without purpose. It's not surprising in the slightest that it took him so long to develop it, because how couldn't it? Like, it's literally nearly 1,000 puzzles, and every one of them is built so that you can get to the next one. Like, they're not there to progress you to the end of the level. They are there to give you the understanding to get to the next puzzle.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful and so just artistically pure, and I cannot describe it on a level I want to. I'm almost proud that I played it. And the thing that I really like about it is there was no hype. Like, there was one reveal when they first revealed the PS4, and then the game came out.
Yeah.
And like, if you haven't played it and you're still listening to this point, you've probably had the game ruined for you. I'm sorry, but depending on how we vote at the end of this discussion, I'm gonna play no matter what comes out of this as Game of the Year. That if you haven't played it, give it 2 hours of your time. It's 20 quid. Give it 2 hours of your time, and if it doesn't catch you, it doesn't catch you, but it will catch 10% of those people, and those 10% will get so much out of it.
Yeah.
That's like such a meaningful thing.
I think something we talked about the style of Uncharted. I think I want to say that like The Witness is beautiful as well, and it is like the way, like, it's not photorealistic, but it is still manages to be this beautiful game. Like the way that it puts the environments together, the way that you kind of like. I actually did like the game a lot, but the bit that I didn't like about it was the puzzles. That's the thing. Like that's kind of, I got a bit fatigued by the end of it with doing the little square puzzles.
Yeah.
Like you can argue with this. Like if it had less of them, I think I would have probably liked it more.
Okay.
If you maybe cut a certain number out. Like I know, like you can argue that like a lot of them are necessary. Like, you know, like say the section, there's a section where there's a bunch of trees, and that's relevant to how you solve the puzzles. You know, there's a section where you come to a bunch of trees, and it's not immediately apparent what these trees have to do with the puzzle.
And then you hear that.
Yeah, and like that's, you know, that's a bit where I wouldn't cut anything. I like that.
Okay.
But then there was other parts where I was kind of, you know, I've done this puzzle and this puzzle and this puzzle and this puzzle and this puzzle, and there's a few bits where I would have been like, just a few less, like, you know, like, and I think that probably would have made the game worse for you from what you tell me, but I think for me that would have made me more engaged and more involved and more interested in kind of continuing past that point, I guess. If you were the marketing executive, if you were the publisher, and you came to me and said, "Hello, Mr. Jonathan Blow, the game's great, but there's just 5 puzzles too many. We just need you to get rid of 5 puzzles." I don't think I can genuinely, in my mind, pick 5 puzzles and say you don't need them. Really?
Yeah.
See, that's quite interesting.
Like, I'm trying to think about it. Like, I'm trying to think, yeah, the first one you do is just an open the door puzzle, but that teaches you how to open the next door. And then past that point, like, yeah, those are kind of long, but actually they teach you that puzzles can have multiple endings, which is really useful when you get into the treetops, which is entire, like, everything I learned in that game I used. And I learned them by not learning them, just by doing them. I thought I was just making my way through the game, which I was, which is kind of the point. But like, I genuinely don't think there's 5 puzzles in that game that I could get rid of and know I wasn't being of detriment to the game somehow.
I can appreciate that, like, each puzzle in the game did add something, but that doesn't, like, it did mean that I kind of just got bored of puzzles.
That's fine. That I fully understand.
That's kind of the big thing, and I think, like, you know, especially because I did it in.
Did you? Sorry to jump in on you. Did you have the moment when you went into the environment, when you worked out it was in the environment, and when you did, like, did that connect? Because I'm assuming you did, because we talked about it slightly already. But did you want that, and were you surprised and impressed by it, or did you just think, "Fuck, more puzzles"?
No. So I was impressed by it, but I was probably less shocked by it than you were.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of like, I'm like, that kind of concept isn't entirely new to me. From my experience of playing lots of games, like, I'm, you know, I've played lots and lots and lots of games.
Well, you've played far more Myst than me, for example, and so that kind of stuff is.
And like, you know, so I think I saw it and I was like, okay, there's another puzzle, I can see it. And then, yeah, of course, I guess then at that point I go, well, the environment has puzzles, so there's more stuff, and then, you know, you go in the boat and you can see that you can do stuff there. Yeah, so like, I probably wasn't blown away by that, but I still like when I saw that kind of stuff, I was like, that's cool. But it wasn't, this is like amazing, you know. And again, maybe that's just because I'm kind of used to kind of gamey logic.
Yeah, maybe.
But it didn't remove anything, and I think like I think the bits that I really love about The Witness, and it's kind of the stuff that I like about Myst, and the stuff about that is, like, I like it when a puzzle goes, you've completed this puzzle, now I guess I want instant gratification. You know, I want to finish a puzzle and like now the pyramid opens and it's, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe I want that too much, and maybe that's kind of like why. Like, I guess you get that at the end of a series often.
Yeah. Nice. Pull it back to Uncharted 4 there. But like, in all seriousness, like we've spoken about The Witness a lot for a long time, and I do worry that I'm kind of forcing, not forcing, but like I do wonder whether my perspective of it is the general shared perspective, and like, oh my god, it means this, that, the other. Like, am I doing the whole English A level Carol Ann Duffy is the deepest thing ever kind of bullshit? So like, on the other side, what is it that makes Uncharted 4 for you? What is it that makes it the peak of gaming that year?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it is the unity of those elements that I mentioned before. It's the action gameplay, the kind of puzzles, but yeah, it's never really been known for its big puzzles. The graphics, the story, because like, you know, we're comparing a game that has a very like on you story versus a game that kind of, from what you say, maybe kind of later on it changes a little bit, but from a story where you're inferring everything, you know.
Yeah. Mostly, I'd say there's a fair amount of stuff that's given to you, but you have to work to get to that point.
Yeah, I think what I like the thing that really drives me to Uncharted is the story. I'm a big fan of like Indiana Jones and that kind, like what I said before, like Indiana Jones, National Treasure,
exploration stories.
That other one, Dan Brown, the Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, Dan Brown.
Like, it's a very small genre of games. Not games, sorry. It's a very small genre of movies. It's a very small genre of games because it's pretty much held up by Uncharted and Tomb Raider. Yeah. Last of Us does it in a way. Like, in Last of Us, the problem in Last of Us is the way that it does it is kind of goes, oh, there's another objective, and you get to the top of the tower, and you go, oh, there's another tower over there, so I'll go to that tower.
Right.
What this does is kind of goes, oh, well, I've unlocked the tomb. I now know the secret of this thing, and I know that they were in random country.
Right.
And then, like, I really love that kind of style of story, and I think when it's done really well, I really enjoy it. And it is like, there's not enough in that, like, collection, I guess. Like, there's not enough stuff that I like. There's not enough things that do that well, you know.
Yeah.
And I really like that kind of story. And Tomb Raider's a little bit iffy, actually.
Tomb Raider, I think.
So here's the thing: Tomb Raider 2, which is very dated. Very dated. This isn't Tomb Raider 2. Tomb Raider Rise of the Tomb Raider. This is Tomb Raider 2.
The actual Tomb Raider 2.
Like, and the original kind of 3 Tomb Raiders all did this as like they did the same kind of story as Indiana Jones, where you go through an environment, you find something, and you know where to go next because of that, you know.
Right.
And Uncharted does that really well, probably the best of any story.
Okay.
You know, and I think if I was to pinpoint why it does it really well, it's just that like they're happy to focus on interactions between characters, interactions between the world and characters, and in it's hard, it's difficult to say, you know. But also they also do what the movies do like this, where they have the really dramatic set pieces, the really dramatic, like, you know, you're in a burning building and everything's on fire, and like, I mean, that's not Uncharted 4, but
so I
does it well.
So I want to speak to that to some extent, because the closest thing I've played to Uncharted is Tomb Raider.
Yeah,
and they're fairly close as an analog for each other. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think Uncharted does it better, but
okay,
yeah,
that's fine. A lot of the problem I had with the gameplay of Tomb Raider, and I realise that I'm not actually critiquing Uncharted. I'm sorry, bear with me. A lot of the problem I had with Tomb Raider is that there were lots of cool things happening in the world, and lots of cool things happening in the cinematics. And I wasn't doing them. Like, they were scripted sequences. They never felt like I had much control over them. I either went forwards or backwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so what I would say to that actually is that Uncharted, at least if I cast my eye back, like, the thing that Uncharted does is it tries to avoid doing that.
Oh, right,
like,
okay.
there's a section of the game in 3, I think. This is exactly what I mean. Like, I find it hard, but in 3, where you're chasing after an airplane, and you actually do chase after the airplane. You run after it. Like, that's not a cutscene. Like, it merges through, because the thing that it does do is kind of join scenes with, like, quick cutscenes, I guess is what you'd say.
Okay.
It's not quite take the control off the player, but it's like you were running and now someone grabbed you and you're in a Jeep and now you're in the Jeep.
So I get what you mean, but the real problem I had with Tomb Raider is that I worked out very quickly that if I stopped, it stopped. Like, I was playing. There's a really bad moment with Tomb Raider. I remember when there's, like, you're walking across, like, over a covered bridge, and the bridge starts to crumble, and you run along it, and the bridge crumbles. And I thought, like, I'm just gonna put the controller down, and I put the controller down, and nothing happened, and she died. And it was like, this is not, like, she died, and then the scene started up again, and, like, that it wasn't. It didn't feel like it was happening, and it didn't feel like I was escaping it. I was just progressing to the end of a tunnel. Like, and the tunnel was just a different tunnel, and it was just cinematic. The best bit, the parts of those kind of games I like was the kind of puzzle solving, the combat, the world building. But I found that to get there, I was kind of ushering scenes along so that for the purpose of the story of the game.
I can see why you say that. I think Uncharted does, like, you list your problems with Tomb Raider. Uncharted, I think, does, like, it fixes most of those.
Okay.
Like, I don't think Uncharted takes too much control off you. I don't think I agree. Like it does have the scenes where you're running across a broken bridge, and I'm not quite sure what you're after, but, like, when you said, if I stop moving, stuff stops happening, I thought you meant, like, literally, like, you stand on the bridge and nothing happens.
I don't quite mean it like that, but I mean, like, if you're not playing it exactly as it's designed to be played, there's no freedom for movement there. There's no freedom for getting it right or wrong. It was just, you are at the front of a scene as a bridge crumbles. If you fall behind it, it doesn't have the same weight because the bridge doesn't crumble in time. It's never actually a challenge the game is giving you. You might as well be progressing through a cutscene, and the outcome of that cutscene is bridge falls or you reach end of bridge. There is no kind of movement there. You can't problem solve that. There's no tackling that situation.
Yeah.
It's just run to end of corridor.
So I'll tell you something Uncharted 4 does really well in addressing that.
Sure.
Potentially not well if you play it again, but it plays very well the first time. Is when you play through, there's numerous scenes, like the scene that they showed at E3 where you're in a Jeep and you're running away from a tank that's chasing you and some other things that are chasing you
through the streets.
One of the things that does really well is it makes you feel like you've got the choice about where you're going.
Right. Okay.
Like, it is quite, there is, like, a path, and there is a certain variance you can give to it. Like, there is, like, a certain thing, but the path is pretty much the same.
Okay.
But when you're playing it, it feels like you're literally, like, I can choose whichever way I go.
Right. Okay.
And it very much feels that way, in the same kind of way that, like, there's an open world section. Well, there's an open section in the game where you're progressing through woods, and you can kind of go to the left and explore something over there that's unrelated to what's on the right. But it feels open world. It feels like you can choose where you're going. It feels like you're not on this, like, fixed path, but really you kind of are.
Okay.
Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but, like, it gives you the feeling of this freedom without actually being that freedom there.
Okay.
But also, I mean, like, even in that, like, they still, like, even in this larger section of the game, they made sure that there was interesting stuff dotted around. Like, if you play the game and you search for all the treasure, like, whenever they pick up stuff, they comment on it, or they, like the characters interact over it. And especially in this, like, there's a lot of interaction between, like, Nate and his wife. Who is his wife? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. There's so many games where like they're together, they're not together. There's a lot of interaction there, and I really like. I guess like I really like overt story, and from the sounds of it, you really like kind of a story that you have to kind of puzzle together and like feel it, you know.
I think the story is laid out for you in The Witness, but I think you won't. I think it gives you the building blocks to appreciate that it's there.
Yeah.
So like I think the story is like the story is written into the world very clearly, but you won't be able to see it until you've understood how the world works. And to some extent, the way the world works and the way the cogs turn is that story.
Yeah.
So I think the way we'll finish this up is like closing remarks. So let's focus on like the other thing I want to ask is Uncharted 4 had multiplayer. Didn't it? How does that?
So
is that okay?
I'm not the person to ask.
That's fine.
Like I actually at the time I didn't have a PlayStation Plus, so I don't actually know too much about it. But
so we'll do this as a single player thing. Then.
Even with that, like, I'm not a big fan of the multiplayer. Like, I'm not, because like I know people do play the multiplayer even now. Like, but the thing for me is always the single player, and that's always what I play a Naughty Dog game for. Okay,
that's fine. So multiplayer is just something that we can't really speak to.
No.
Whether for better or worse. Give me your closing remarks on style of the game. The style, like the visuals, the sound, the stylistic choices.
So Uncharted is a game, Uncharted 4. And to be honest, the whole Uncharted series, maybe less so one. One's kind of like the Assassin's Creed, you know, it's the game that started it, yeah, but it didn't quite perfect it, and it didn't quite know if it wanted to be a story game or an action game. That's like the biggest thing of Uncharted 1. And Uncharted 4, like every single element of the game feels handpicked. It feels like they've spent time going, what music is relevant here? What music is good to use here? What sounds should we use? Like, it's got a very tooled feel to it, you know. It's like, you know, I was speaking of Witcher earlier. It's something Witcher does really well as well, is that like everything feels like it was chosen. And I mean, obviously that's happened anyway, but but it does it so well. And like one of the best moments in the game for me, actually, on Uncharted 4 is there's a big story element where you break into someone's house. Okay. Well,
sounds like he's not a very nice man, I gotta admit.
Yeah, you break into a house as a kid, and it's full of antiques like everywhere. And I spent like a good sort of half an hour to an hour just looking at every single thing and going, "That looks cool. That looks cool." And I've done that in other Uncharted games as well. Like in Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3, there's times in it where you can go, "I want to look at every single piece of this room because there's an interesting something. There's like some treasure over there. There's some treasure over here." And that was one of my favourite parts of the game. Just because I did spend like half an hour looking at the sarcophagus and then like something and something. Like the elements like that, they've spent so long looking at it. And I'm like, there's no doubt that room took them hundreds of hours to make. You know, it's no doubt that like someone spent ages and ages thinking like, what should go here?
Okay. I greatly respect that. My closing remark on the style of The Witness is that every part of The Witness, in my opinion, is built to challenge you as a player, and not just challenge you from a sense of complete this puzzle. It's built to challenge your perception of video games and your perception of the way they're built up. The style of The Witness is a challenge in itself. The way that environment looks is built to make you think, is this a puzzle? Can I complete this? Why do I complete this? What's the purpose of it? There's puzzles in the sand that I would spend hours looking for, and they weren't there. It was that I wasn't looking in the right place, and the game taught me how to look in the right place. I think that The Witness could not have worked without any other style. It couldn't have worked photoreal because it would have changed the way you see it. It couldn't have worked if it didn't have that slightly creepy sci-fi air to it, because you very quickly understand, or when you put the hours in, you understand that actually it is a very creepy sci-fi environment. You just need to get there to see it. The way that it does visual storytelling is second to none. I have never organically looked into the lore of a game or gained my own understanding of the lore of a game based on visual storytelling like I have before, and I know most of the lore of Dark Souls 1. I think that every other game that I've played since, so like I'm playing Dishonored at the minute, and it doesn't come close to a Game of the Year in my opinion, I'm afraid, although it did critically well. And a lot of the time I'm looking at it and thinking, this is good, but I wonder if it could have been done. And I'm not trying to say that like The Witness made me a game developer, but it just made me aware of the kind of choices game developers could make.
Yeah.
It made me aware of how like a game at peak standards could be this. And it's not made games any worse as a result, it's just made The Witness better. I think the stylings of The Witness are not just hand-picked, but couldn't work any other way. Closing remarks on gameplay.
So, Uncharted 4 gameplay, I mean, it's good, but like, I'll be honest with you, like, it still does what the other games do. There's not massive variation. Like they add stuff. They add like the grappling hook, and they add like
the conversation options.
Yeah, like there is definitely stuff that they add, and there is like a definite evolution to the game. But it's not, like ultimately, like when we compare these, we're talking about like a game that's kind of got its own thing and stands up. Whereas I've gone to go, is it bad because it's not developed much from Uncharted 3, or is it you have to look at it like that, like. If you hadn't played an Uncharted game, like, and you jumped into this one, you'd go, the gameplay is great. There's not, if you get what I mean, like, it's not.
The gameplay is as good as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, whether maybe it could have evolved more is a different question, but I really enjoyed it, and I think gameplay added so many, like, kind of. Very organic, natural feeling action scenes to this game, because like you talk about the game taking control and this kind of stuff in Tomb Raider. One of the things that Uncharted does, as I said, was let you feel like you're in control. Let's say, like you press the button and there's a kind of cutscene, but like you kind of instigated it.
Okay.
And you're pressing the attack button and you're pressing the block buttons in that kind of cutscene. Well, it's not even cutscene-y. It doesn't do any sort of like quick time event that Tomb Raider does, and like in Uncharted 4 especially, like there was a lot of that, and it still felt like I was really in. Like there's like this amazing fight where you're fighting through a broken building you're fighting through a building that's breaking as you're kind of fighting through it,
right?
And through the whole fight, you feel like you're doing all of these things. Even though obviously the game's really helping you through that, because the way that you can't control the character the way that it's being controlled at the end of the day, but it makes it feel like you're like it's a game that makes you feel like you're an action hero. It makes you feel like when it's played well. I do worry that like whenever I talk about this stuff, I always worry that there's somebody who's picking up Uncharted 4 and they're shooting at a wall. And like
what do you want about this?
Yeah.
In terms of closing remarks for The Witness, in terms of gameplay, I would say that the gameplay is in itself the building blocks of how you gain an understanding of the world. Like the very first hallway you step into is a puzzle, and you will not appreciate that is a puzzle until you've spent 10 hours in the world. And I think that you probably wouldn't have gained that connection because you saw half the puzzles in one session, half the puzzles in another. So when you got stuck on something, I assume that you moved over and did the next thing.
Yeah.
And so you might not have gained that sense of real progression through it because you were always finding solutions to stuff. Whereas I am thicker than you, quite happily so. And I a number of times had to go away from the game and come back and let it settle in that I had progressed in some way. And so to that point, when I went back and realised, when I started the game again, looked at the chamber I was in and went, fuck, this is a puzzle. That was a meter of how much progression I'd made. And when I discovered the first video and it chilled me to the bone, that was a meter of how much progression I made. The entire game is the perfect tutorial. And at the same time, it turns a perfect tutorial into an unbelievable game. Like it was designed at its very core to make you look at it and go, fuck, this has been here the whole time. And every time I made a meter of progression, I just realized how far I had come and how far the game had wanted me to come.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone over story pretty heavily, and I feel like summarizing either of the stories in closing remarks is to do them justice. You've made an incredibly good case for Uncharted. I don't like, and I've never played them, so I can't really say that, but I've never been drawn to play Uncharted. I don't know what it is, but I think maybe the problem is that I spend a lot of time watching movies. Movies are my kind of interest. It's what I studied, and it's what I'd hope to do someday, in some form or another. And so when somebody compares like Uncharted to Indiana Jones, I've always had that sense of like, but it's like a different medium, and what I want the medium to do is something that can't be done in something else. Like Uncharted is a very playable movie, and that's to do it a disservice in that it's better than that, and it's more of a video game than that. But
that's interesting.
But in my opinion, The Witness is a quintessential. Like, if you were asking me to convince somebody to play video games, my previous answers would have been like, I might give them Mass Effect, I might give them The Walking Dead. I would give them The Witness. I would give them The Witness and show them this is what a game is. Because this is the building block of what every game is. This is the perfect example of what every game can be if it's built this way. And you will develop yourself playing it. And I do not get that from any other game. The Witness, in my opinion, is a game that could not be done in any other medium and shows to... And it's bullshit to say games are art, but like, it perfectly summarizes why I think games can be art.
I don't know if it's BS to say that games are art.
No, but like that's one of the generic tags that you label onto indie games, right? Like Gone Home is games were art. The Stanley Parable is games were art.
Yeah.
Whereas this is art as a game.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think just to speak on something you said, for me, like the end point of a good game for me is to feel like a movie, which I guess is where you and me kind of probably differ quite greatly. Is that, you know, not to like not fully, but like say the reason I like Witcher is because it has bits in it where it's going like I watch it and I'm like, I'm gonna watch this scene for the next half an hour and I'm so engrossed in it. And the same thing happens for less time. It's not quite half an hour in Uncharted, but you know, I'm like, this is me in a movie, except I can interact with stuff at the same time, and like, you know, and that's kind of like that. This is why I ultimately am drawn towards the PlayStation at this kind of time, is that it has more of the games that are trying to be movies, I think.
Yeah, actually, I can really see that.
The problem is that, like, if I agreed with your reason for choosing Witness, if I agreed with choosing Witness, it would be for a reason that you wouldn't like.
What's that?
Not in quite. What I mean is that the reason I did like The Witness and the bits that I did like of The Witness, and I know I said about cutting puzzles, but it was the fact that, like, the puzzles, you're right, like, the puzzles all do different things, and they do kind of teach you different ways of learning, and I kind of, if there's a bit that, if there's something that you've said that I've agreed with, it is that part, you know, it is the way the puzzles go. Now, I think you said that I was cleverer than you. It's not that. I'm just very used to puzzles. I'm very used to, like, gamey and kind of understanding those things. So, like, a lot of the game, I would come to something and it'd be like, oh, there's dots here and dots there. Obviously, I need to do this.
See, but I think that does speak to you being smarter than me. I mean, you're undeniably smarter than me. You're fucking at King's and you're doing maths. Like, you're undeniably smarter than me. But I think also you're also smarter than me in terms of this game where I couldn't do that. Like, a puzzle would stump me for hours and days, and it would be some kind, like, almost pure luck of coming back to it and knowing that I solved it that time that showed me that I'd made that progression. But I would make the counterpoint that even though you pushed through it in 2 heavy sessions from what it sounds like,
oh yeah, I don't want to undersell it.
The thing that makes it really strong and really important to me is I could boot up The Witness on my TV in front of us now, and you would still be able to rush through it far faster than you did the first time because of what it taught you. And so you'd be able to find those obelisks far faster.
And I think that is fair.
To reach that deeper level.
I think that is fair. Like, you know, when you start making the connections between what the symbols mean, and then you go through and you're like, I get this now. I can fully appreciate that kind of level of understanding of it. So, like, are we stalemated? I think I could probably.
So can I put it to you that The Witness is Game of the Year for 2016?
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard us come to a conclusion about the Game of the Year, and we are happy this year to give it to The Witness, with Uncharted 4 being a very close runner-up. You made a fantastic argument for it. Absolutely fantastic. You always do. I hate that you can argue these things so well. If you enjoyed The Witness, or maybe you haven't tried it, pick it up. You should. Also pick up Uncharted. You should pick that game up as well. If you like this show, we hope that you did. Please consider subscribing to Games Up Podcast. We put an episode out, not a Game of the Year episode, obviously, but we put an episode out every Monday at 6:30. We're usually discussing gaming news, and we'd always appreciate you being along for the ride. Come and join us on Facebook or Twitter. We're at Games Upcast on both, where we talk about gaming news, and we will leave it at that because it's been an hour and a half of your time. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week for a regular episode of the show, and the game's up.